Hello, this is Deacon Chris from St. Mary's in Corvallis. It's been a while since I have recorded a video, but I wanted to record a video of my Father's Day homily for this upcoming Sunday because I'm a father too, and I know what it's like. When my son Tim was 10, I picked him up from soccer practice. A couple of the boys were talking tough about the next game. "We're going to kick their bottoms," they said, or words to that effect. And Tim said, "Yeah, we're going to kick their bottoms." Then he turned and saw me, and he burst into tears. He knew what he said was wrong. He knew there would be consequences. This is what it's like to be a father. In a way, we have a lot of power. We have the power to set boundaries. And we should exercise that power. And there should be consequences when the boundaries are crossed. But fathers are also vulnerable. We can't keep our children from rubbing shoulders with the rest of the world. We can't keep them from being hurt. And that's really hard. We love our children. When they burst into tears, we burst into tears too. I love the word scatter in the first parable in the gospel today. The gospel is from Mark chapter 4. I love that word scatter, how it implies the hard work of sowing, but also a letting go. I love the idea that the seed grows we know not how, because God is a mystery. I love the idea that the seed grows of its own accord, because grace is a gift. We can't earn it or control it. And our children are gifts. Our children grow of their own accord. We work and work to support them and teach them, but they have free will. They make choices. And they're their own people from the beginning, even from birth. They're not us. We have to tell them things, important things. But we also have to learn who they uniquely are. God is in their lives too. Tim has grown up to be a wonderful man, and my son John too. And Maggie has grown up to be a wonderful woman. And I had something to do with that. But looking back now, I realize how much was grace, how much was given. Later that day, after Tim said the bad word, I dropped something heavy on my foot and said a couple of bad words. And I had to wash my own mouth out with soap. And we can take this further. We can turn this around because we are taught to call God the Father. The scriptures describe God as mother too, in Psalm 131, several times in Isaiah, and in a couple of other places in the Old Testament. Jesus compares himself to a mother hen gathering his brood. And as the Catechism tells us, God is beyond all language, including our own, and so is beyond all gender. That's Bumble making noise back there. But Father is the most important image, the most common image in the scriptures. It's the image that Jesus uses the most often. And so it's really important. It tells us something. God is all-powerful, of course, so the comparison breaks down at a certain point. But if he is anything like human fathers, he can also hurt. He is also vulnerable. In a sense, we could say that God expresses his power most fully and completely by giving it away out of love, so he can enter into our lives, so he can feel what we feel. He cries when we cry. Above all, he gives us freedom. He lets us grow of our own accord. He sets us in a garden and then lets us ruin it. And there are consequences. We are expelled. But he never stops caring for us, never stops loving us. It's his love that is unending. Someone told Barb the other day that she couldn't believe in a God who would sacrifice his own son, just give him away to be killed. But she's gotten that wrong. Jesus gives himself freely. The scriptures make that clear more than once. And if the Father is one with the Son, and the Son with the Father, as we believe, isn't it the Father too who is hanging on the cross? Who so loves the world, he suffers for it and with it? I've not heard that before, so maybe it's wrong. But it seems to me that it has to be true. It's the logic of the Trinity. In the famous parable of the prodigal son, the father lets his son waste his inheritance and fall among the pigs. But when his son comes home, he runs out and embraces him. He throws him a party. The Father is prodigal, and the Father is God. God pours out his love. The prodigal father pours out his love. All we have to do, like the prodigal son, is come home. Power and vulnerability, authority and letting go, both. The father didn't approve of how his son had chosen to live, and the son knew it. The father tried to guide the son until he couldn't. I saw a young father the other day. His 3 or 4-year-old son was driving a little child-sized bulldozer. It was self-powered. He could steer it. It was shiny and new. It looked like the real thing. And the father was walking along beside him, looking at his phone. He never looked up. He never looked at his son. Now, that was just a moment, and I don't want to judge. I don't know what happened the rest of the day. But that image, I think, is representative. And it sticks in my mind. It saddens me. Parables like the parables in the gospel today, for Father's Day, Mark chapter 4, parables are simple stories drawn from ordinary life, as C.H. Dodd says, but stories that leave us in sufficient doubt about what they mean, that we are teased into thought. This is how Jesus taught. It's at the very heart of the gospel. This is why the scribes and the Pharisees have him killed, because he doesn't spell everything out, because he wants them to think for themselves. Maybe the image of God the Father is the most important parable of all. Maybe that's what God the Father really does. He calls us to think. Maybe that's what all of us who are fathers should try to teach our children, to read between the lines. In the last few years of his life, my father had aphasia. He knew what he wanted to say, but he couldn't find the right words. One of the last times I saw him before he died, we were standing in his carport. I was saying goodbye. When he hugged me, I could hear his hearing aid buzzing. He said, "Chris, I will never forgive you." But I knew what he meant. He meant, I think, he meant to say, I will never forget you. God the Father never forgets us. And he always forgives, always. My mom and dad didn't belong to any church. They were very skeptical about religion, and they were skeptical about me being Catholic, and they were skeptical about me being a deacon. And so I always worried about what I would say to them as they were dying, whether I could give them any comfort. My mom died suddenly, so it wasn't until my dad was in the hospital at the end that I had a chance to say something. He was frantic and irrational. He was afraid. He thought I was his brother. And he was afraid. He seemed lost. He was like a little boy trying to find his way home. And I knew what to say then. I had to shout it, but I knew what to say. Don't be afraid, Dad. Don't be afraid. God is with you. The Father is waiting. The Father is here.